Hi, this is Jeff and this is Photoshop Transform Tools. Okay, so in one of our previous screencasts we looked at blending tools in Photoshop. But blending tools aren't everything that we're going to require in order to be successful in actually integrating different elements from different photographs in Photoshop. Sometimes we actually need to alter the shape or scale of whatever we import. And that's what we're going to concentrate on today, is because that all has to do with transform tools. So, in order to get started here, let's actually look at our photo. It's a very pretty photo of some pink lilies on a pond. We're going to actually go over here to another photo that's also got a lily in it that was taken at a completely different time, and it's got a very pretty purple water lily in it that's already selected. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do edit, and I'm going to do copy, and I'm going to come back over to our pink lilies, and I'm going to hit edit, paste. Notice this thing is huge in comparison to the lilies around it. So if we're going for realism, we've already failed. This thing is massive. So let's actually see what we can do about that. So I'm going to go up here to edit, and I'm making sure that over on the right hand side I have the correct layer selected, and I do. And I'm going to go transform, and I'm going to do scale. There's a couple different options in scale. We can actually scale things according to aspect ratio. That means linking our height and our width. I'm actually going to hit that little button so we do that, so it stays pretty much the same as we shrink it. And I'm going to get it in here. My goal is to get it kind of right down, just so it's barely kind of in the zone here. I think that's about where I want to start. We're going to do some other transform stuff too, so I'm just going to say that that's alright. Okay, so that was the scale tool. However, there's a bunch of other transform tools too. For instance, we can rotate. I'm going to do that here just to demonstrate for a moment. It doesn't do us a whole lot of good right here because the way the shadows work, I don't think it's going to be a ton of help to us. So let's actually not do too much other than just kind of rotate it just a bit like that. And we'll go ahead and save that. Let's go back over here over to edit again, and this is kind of one of the ones that I really think is going to be useful to us, and that's actually perspective. Perspective actually lets us kind of create a sense of depth in how we manipulate the photograph, and I'm just going to modify this a bit that direction. If I pull at the bottom, notice it gets bigger. If I pull at the top, it gets smaller. So let's just go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to pull it in a little bit too. I'm just going to adjust it over a little bit. And I'm going to say that that's alright. Now notice already it looks more natural than it did coming in. But we're still not quite where we want to be. Alright, we've done perspective, but I want to do one more kind of similar tool to perspective. It might help us a little bit here with kind of how we need to adjust this so that we maximize that depth effect that we've just created just a little bit, and that's the skew transform. And I'm just going to pull on this just a little bit, and I'm just going to pull this one in just a little bit, and that's going to kind of pull the center of our image back just a little bit so it gives it just a little more depth. And we're actually just going to select that. That's starting to look better, but we still have at least a little bit of a problem in the fact that if we look around and look at the other items, we actually have an issue of, oh hey, the other items have shadows. So what can we do about that? Okay, so we have this flower, and we still have the issue of that we don't have the shadow quite right. That it needs a shadow in order for it to look convincing. But that's actually something where a different type of transform tool can help us. So that's going to be kind of a roundabout process to get there, but we're going to try this. So I'm going to go over to the magic wand tool here, and I'm actually going to select the empty space of my layer. Now if I look over here, my layer's got some empty space in it, just the flower, and I'm selecting the empty space of that layer, and then I'm going to come up here to select, and I'm going to select inverse. So now just the flower is selected. I'm not doing this just to select the flower though. Really what I'm after is it something in the shape of the flower, so I kind of want to have the selection without the flower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm actually going to rename this layer, and I'm going to call it shadow. And then I'm going to drag this layer down underneath actually our flower layer. Now I still don't have a way to do a shadow here, even though the layer's named shadow. So how do I do that? Well, I'm actually going to come up here, I'm going to select, and I'm actually going to go transform selection. And this allows me to actually shrink or expand an existing selection. And I'm actually just going to expand this selection just a bit. Alright. Now, I'm going to come over here to my paint palette tools, my color selection tools, and I'm going to select black. And then I'm going to come over here and select the paint bucket tool. And we're going to fill this area with black. Now that looks a little bit harsh. I don't know about you, but I think that's probably a tip-off that that's not real. It's not the way we want that to be. So what do we do about that? Well, we actually have a couple of options. And so what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to go over to opacity on this layer. And I'm actually going to start turning it down. And it looks like about right there we start to get what approaches a fairly realistic shadow compared to the others. And if I now do select and deselect, how's it look? Well, already that looks a little bit better than it did, but we still have some issues about kind of how that shadow's placed even now. Notice that we've got this issue about where there's shadows kind of going, and it seems to be a little bit the wrong direction maybe. So what are we going to do about that? Well, we're going to head back over to our transform tools on the other side to help us out with that. So we're going to go over here to edit, transform, and we're actually going to select distort. And in order to kind of pull this into the right placing, kind of similar to the other ones, we're going to actually just modify the handles a little bit here. And this won't be perfect, but it'll give you an idea. And there we go. So that's just some examples of how we can use transform tools to create something pretty incredible. I mean, we've actually taken a whole nother flower, added it into this composition, and even given it a full-on shadow that looks fairly similar to the natural ones around it. However, we still got a couple of imperfections. Notice that we would want to clean this up here. At this spot we've got where the shadow overlaps, and we really would want to watch up here to make sure that we cleaned up and we didn't have a shadow, that our artificial shadow comes in the wrong spot here. So there's still some things that we need to clean up, but it gives you an idea of how we can utilize the transform tools in this process.